Welcome to the Entering Tyngsborough podcast, the new podcast from the town of Tyngsborough. I'm Roni Camille. Thanks so much for joining us. We are having candid conversations about what's happening in town government and in the community. On today's episode, we talk to Eric Salerno. He's our town planner and economic development director. And we're going to take a deep dive into what the town is doing to help ease the housing crunch in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But first, here are 3 things that you should know about what's happening in your community. Town Manager Colin Loisel kicked off a series of informal budget office hours this month to help residents understand the fiscal year 25 budget and its process ahead of the town meeting in May. There are 2 remaining sessions happening. One will take place on Wednesday, April 17th, and Tuesday, April 23rd, both at 6 p.m. in the town hall at 25 Bryant's Lane. And if you can't make the sessions, but still have questions about the budget, we've got you covered. There are 2 additional ways you could reach out. You could reach out to the town manager and his team via email at administration@tyngsborough.ma.gov, or the old-fashioned way by phone. That number is 978-649-2300, extension 100. April is Town Cleanup Month. The Highway Department, in partnership with the Board of Health and Sustainability Committee, are excited to kick off the 17th annual Town-wide Cleanup Month to help beautify our town. Residents can participate by picking up a cleaning kit at the Highway Garage on Kendall Road or at the Town Hall and Public Library on Bryant Lane. The kits have these bright yellow bags. Once the bags are filled with trash, you can leave it out on the curb for it to be collected. You can visit the town website for more information on this program and suggested areas to help clean up and get some safety tips. Have you ever found yourself wanting to serve in your town but didn't know where to start? Well, here's your chance. Come serve the community. The Select Board is seeking resident volunteers to serve on a variety of boards and committees in town. There's a full list that's available on the town website, tyngsborough.ma.gov. And now on to the podcast.
My name's Eric Salerno. I'm the Town Planner and Economic Development Director here in Tyngsborough.
Eric, thanks so much for joining us today. First and foremost, let's talk about your title. You have 2 of them. You're the Town Planner and you're also the Economic Development Director.
That's true.
What does that entail?
Sure. The Town Planner side has to do with ensuring that permitting follows procedure and state statute appropriately. There's a lot of regulations to ensure we're following the law. It also involves creating, as you might imagine, plans themselves. So the planning office in municipalities is responsible for the development of housing production plans, assisting with the master plan production. They're involved with community outreach for different types of development. They're involved with zoning amendments, evaluating zoning, explaining zoning, making corrections and adjustments in order to make improvements and take advantage of opportunities within town. And obviously, planner typically advises the planning board. I occasionally advise the zoning board of appeals, and I also staff the Affordable Housing Trust and the zoning review committee.
So you wear a lot of hats, obviously, and then in turn, economic development, what does that entail for somebody that does not know what economic development means?
Right. So in a lot of cases, planning and economic development overlap. Obviously, being able to provide personalized service to companies and business owners or organizations that are either already located in Tyngsborough or are considering locating here. It's helpful to have a single person that understands the permitting process, as well as basically knocking down any barriers and or coordinating team members to ensure that the process is as smooth as possible, avoiding any unexpected hurdles or unexpected surprises when it comes to development costs or permitting processes and or land use issues. Sometimes they could be conflicting. So a town planner obviously is responsible for supporting the requests of a select board or a planning board. So in a lot of cases, when there's either public opinion or opinions from board members that are in elected positions, the town planner is obligated to either advise and or represent those interests. Sometimes they're not in alignment with a developer. So in those cases, it can be a little bit challenging. I think we do a pretty good job balancing that here in Tyngsborough. From an economic development perspective, it also means representing the community out in the greater Boston region. So when there's a real estate event or a real estate seminar, a manufacturing event, or some other regional economic development discussion and or presentation, I'm there to ensure that people remember that Tyngsborough is a great place to do business. Make sure that if somebody's looking for specific opportunities, that Tyngsborough is part of the consideration, and ensuring that Tyngsborough's residents and best interests are represented from a transportation and infrastructure perspective.
How important is that in maintaining that sort of those relationships outside of the community to obviously bring in more into Tyngsborough?
Sure. I personally think it's vitally important. Having a representative out in the marketplace representing your community ensures that it builds the reputation of that community, ensures that people understand that the community itself is investing in a resource, specifically that economic development director, to go out and find opportunities and welcome businesses for economic expansion in their community. It also helps keep the community informed. So in a lot of cases, while I might be out in the greater Boston region or the greater Lowell region to represent Tyngsborough, I'm also out there to gain information about policy changes or infrastructure projects or bond bills or other information. So getting out there ensures that the town is best positioned to take advantage of either new programs or specific initiatives that are taking place either at the state or regional level.
And so, Eric, in since you've arrived in town, there's been a lot of changes. The town has grown, and obviously, one of the things that we're talking about today is something that's going to be coming up at town meeting is the MBTA Community Act. And obviously, you and several people that live in town have been working over the past year. Can you talk to us in the time that we have today about the work that you've done and the Zoning Review Committee has done? And what exactly is the MBTA Community Act, and how is it affecting us here in Tyngsborough?
Sure. The MBTA communities legislation, also known as Section 3 of Chapter 40A, Chapter 40 is our zoning act, is legislation that was technically passed during the Baker administration, is now coming to fruition under the Healy-Driscoll administration. The legislation requires 177 communities that are connected to or adjacent and or served by the MBTA in the greater Boston region to create a zoning district that allows multifamily housing development by right. The high level view is that at Tyngsborough, an adjacent community, is required to have a 50-acre district. It doesn't have to be all contiguous. That allows multifamily housing by right with 15 units per acre. So on paper, the community should be able to show a yield or a potential build out of 750 units. In most communities, and Tyngsborough included, that's not necessarily a practical or realistic outcome because it's a zoning requirement, not a development requirement. There is no requirement that says that the land has to be undeveloped. So communities have some flexibility with regards to where they're going to locate their district portions. So we're calling them sub-districts. I worked with the Zoning Review Committee, which was a highly productive and effective group of individuals that are volunteers from the Select Board, the Planning Board, the ZBA, and the public. And together, between the Planning Office, that committee, and input from the public, we came up with a strategy that includes 3 different sub-districts. So we have one area that's on the southern portion of Middlesex Road, where Merrimack Commons and Tyngsborough Crossing already exists. So we already have some multifamily and relatively high density housing in that area. We don't anticipate any new construction to be located there, and it's perfectly compliant with the legislation. We also have two other districts towards the northern portion of town, also along Middlesex Road, one on the east side, which is where the Pheasant Lane Mall undeveloped parking lot is. That's where we would identify it as a short-term potential development opportunity. And that area would yield approximately 184 units. Keep in mind, too, that some open space, some shared space, other areas, other components of development might mean that the likelihood of all 184 units getting developed, if there was a proposal provided, that's the maximum number. I would anticipate that if there was a proposal, it would be slightly lower. And the third subdistrict is the area behind Olive Garden and Nature's Remedy. So the way our zoning districts work, up and down Middlesex Road, we have the B3 or retail district corridor. And then on the outside of that, so that extends approximately 350 feet, I believe, from the center of Middlesex Road. And then beyond that, at least on the west side of Middlesex Road, it's industrial district zoned. So we have approximately, I want to say 12 acres. I'd have to pull up the exact plan. But we have a smaller portion of our zoning district for MBTA communities zoned along a strip that follows the line between the B3 retail core district and the industrial district. And this was so that the town could maintain its retail development potential along that area. It also happens to be located where we already have an industrial development project permitted. So we'd look at that as either a long-term slash potentially no-term development opportunity, but I consider it a good strategy and a good hedge for the community, because if for whatever reason, you never know what's going to happen with regards to economic downturns or different things happening in the real estate market with regards to industrial development. If that project didn't come to fruition, we look at this new zoning as providing another opportunity for that currently undeveloped land to get developed.
And so at the Maytown meeting, what exactly will people be voting for?
Sure. At Maytown meeting, we do have several different zoning articles that we're going to be having a hearing for on April 4th and 18th. We'll see how many of those are recommended for the warrant for town meeting, hopefully all of them. And with regards to MBT communities itself, it is going to be, it entails a zoning amendment that defines the district. There's language that was developed for a new section within the zoning bylaw that describes, what the requirements are for submitting a proposal for that district, what some of the other requirements are with regards to parking, et cetera, and the zoning map itself. So at town meeting, attendees should expect to see the zoning language itself, some depictions of the sub-district boundaries in the three different areas that I just described. And that's essentially it.
And that would make the town compliant with the law.
Correct. So once a community passes its MBTA community zoning amendments, it does go back to the EOHLC, which is the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. That is the department or the state agency that is tasked with defining and evaluating compliance on a community by community basis. And Tyngsborough has been working with, I should have mentioned, by the way, Tyngsborough has been working with NIMCOG, our Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, to help us develop the language of the zoning bylaw and create the maps that define the districts. But we've also been relying on both the Attorney General's office as well as staff at the EOHLC to review the communities, or specifically Tyngsborough's language and zoning map, in order to ensure compliance for if the language gets passed at town meeting. That way, residents can feel confident that if they vote in the affirmative, that the town will be compliant.
And so, Eric, if a yes vote, if these amendments are passed, then the town is compliant, the community is in compliant with the law. What happens if the town at town meeting says no?
Sure. One of the reasons why the article is being presented in May is so that we have enough of a cushion, if you will, to handle that particular situation. If the town votes no, the town technically is not out of compliance yet. We still have one more town meeting before the end of the year. Tyngsborough is legally obligated to get into compliance with MBTA communities legislation by the end of this calendar year. So if it didn't pass, we'd need to identify any specific elements that needed to be adjusted, and then represent that in October. In order to get passed. And if it didn't pass then, the community would be out of compliance. If it was January 1st, 2025, and the zoning amendment has not been passed at a town meeting, the town is then susceptible to the revocation of grants that have been received. I'd like to mention that Tyngsborough has been a great recipient of state funds to help encourage economic development in town. So a lot of the progress that we've seen along Middlesex Road, as well as 425,000 square feet of development along Kendall Road, are in part thanks to up to $6 million over the last 5 to 7 years from MassWorks grants. And MassWorks is one of the programs that evaluates a community's compliance during the application process. And that's just one of like about a dozen different programs that the state is saying, if you're not in compliance with the state law, you're not going to be receiving state funds for assistance.
And we are just about out of time, Eric. And so, if people wanted to learn more about these upcoming zoning changes, as well as what you do and what your office does, how can people get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, my office is right here in the town offices building. People are welcome to set an appointment anytime they'd like. I'm happy to have discussions with folks about existing projects, zoning itself, existing amendments. But you can also keep track of progress on the planning board webpage on the website as well. That's where you can find specific details on all of the zoning amendments that are currently under consideration, as well as some extra information about MBTA communities itself. So we've also created a whole page to help answer questions about the MBTA communities legislation, what Tyngsborough is doing to respond to that and prepare for compliance.
Eric, thanks so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
And that is all the time that we have today on the Entering Tyngsborough podcast. If you want to learn more about your town's government, visit the Town of Tyngsborough's website at tyngsboroughma.gov. I'm Roni Camille. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, be well.